Welcome to my channel. The courtroom was full, the air thick with tension so palpable you could have almost felt the gravity of each hushed rumor and each secret that had been kept for decades. This wasn't another hearing for the Brown family. This was the day the judge issued an order that would shake the very foundations of all Kody Brown and his wives had created. The verdict was unambiguous. An $8 million court judgment linked directly to a decade of shady financial transactions, concealed funds, and secrets the family had worked so hard to keep hidden from the world. For TV fans who had followed theirs since season 1 of Sister Wives, this wasn't breaking news. It was confirmation of a decade of suspicion. For the Browns, though, it was the start of a nightmare that they could no longer spin, conceal, or manipulate. While the judge delivered the verdict, Kody sat stone-faced, his hands clenched tightly on the table so that his knuckles were white with tension. Robyn, sitting next to him, struggled to suppress tears, her face streaked with the same terror she used to try to cover up with high-priced makeup and well-rehearsed words. Before the courtroom sat Christine, Janelle, and Meri, the wives who had left Kody's fantasy but never left reality. Their faces weren't ones of victory, but of relief. For years, they had suffered under the burden of financial deception, emotional manipulation, and the constant fantasy of a family dynasty. Now, with the crack of the gavel, the dynasty was deemed counterfeit, and the falsehoods finally cut through. The court directive was all about years of secret bank accounts, incommensurate transfers, and a pattern of money being channeled by Cody and Robyn into organizations that no one else in the family even knew they existed. There was evidence that TLC paycheck checks, income from the family businesses, and even contributions Christine and Janelle had made for the common goal of developing on Coyote Pass were sent directly into shell accounts under Kody's management. Though the show featured a family poised on the verge of creating a life together, in the background, Kody had been building a money fortress around Robyn and himself at the expense of the other wives, who were left open to the builds-up of debt and the loss of resources. Witness testimony detailed how the financial arrangement was structured. One of Kody's confidants painted a picture of his private office, where stacks of documents were secreted in locked drawers, and how he would brag to Robyn late at night about defying the others. The court filings showed that there were at least 3 LLCs that were used as conduits for family earnings, accounts that carried titles not connected to the Browns, and ran under generic holdings companies. Millions of transactions had been traced, and when accountants matched the payments, they discovered deposits that corresponded perfectly with TLC's production schedule, sponsorship arrangements, and merchandise sales. The lawyers in Christine's team laid out a money laundering timeline that stretched back close to 10 years. Everything Kody did was about controlling, keeping every financial decision within her hands, and ensuring the other wives were put in the position of asking, not deciding. It was also made clearer with the introduction of emails and messages that revealed Robyn's participation, as she had discussions with Kody on how they could justify spending, conceal transfers, and even craft storylines for the show that would divert from their increasing affluence, while the family posted poverty in front of the camera. Complaining about constructing on Coyote Pass or barely getting by, Cody and Robyn were financing high-end purchases, funding sideline ventures, and even projecting vacation trips that never materialized on the show's timeline. The judge's decree of $8 million was not random. It was the measured payback for years of dipping into the communal pool. Wives who had given up their own financial freedom in pursuit of the fantasy of plural marriage had effectively underwritten Kody and Robyn's private kingdom. Christine's contributions, money she had made from independent enterprise, had been devoured by accounts she had no control over. Janelle, who had been the most financially realistic of the wives, had lent money for Coyote Pass projects, only to find it diverted elsewhere. Even Meri, years in the shadow and feeling emotionally forsaken, had contributed earnings that were taken without disclosure. The ruling further revealed the emotional manipulation that Kody had engaged in along with the financial. He wasn't only stockpiling money, he was stockpiling control. By making the other wives financially reliant on him, he cemented his role as patriarch. If Christine asked him, he would remind her of the money he provided. If Janelle asked for answers, he accused her of betrayal. When Meri attempted to stand up for herself, he threatened her with loneliness. All of this fueled a structure in which Kody could hold power, with Robyn alone left with a feeling of stability and privilege. Viewers watching this happen weren't only angry, they were vindicated. Social media had long wondered where the money was going. why the Browns professed ongoing financial struggles while residing in pricey houses, and how Robyn somehow always managed to profit. Now, with the court's ruling, those suspicions were no longer rumors. Now they were facts. The public perception turned more condemning than ever, with Kody's reputation as a misunderstood patriarch shattering under the weight of fiscal dishonesty. As journalists flooded the courthouse steps following the verdict, Kody stormed through them wordlessly, his face flushed with rage. Robyn trailed behind, hugging her papers to her chest and dabbing at tears. Christine, Janelle, and Meri conversed calmly, their words concise but potent. Christine stated, "This wasn't about money. It was about truth. And now the truth is out." Janelle added, "We did trust, and that trust was violated. Today's judgment means the truth eventually caught up." Meri, usually reserved in public, came out with a blunt but devastating comment. "What's done in the dark always comes to light." But though the judgment was historic, it raised more questions than it answered. Where precisely had all that money gone? Were there more accounts, more secret ventures yet to be discovered? Could additional suits be on the horizon as creditors and business associates discovered they had been deceived too? For Robyn and Kody, the $8 million order was more than a financial loss. Publicly, it declared that their secrets no longer stood. For the other wives, it was an opportunity to rebuild, but a reminder of how much had been lost to Kody's deceptions. And yet, somewhere inside, even Christine, Janelle, and Meri understood that this wasn't the conclusion. The decision may have shut the door on one story, but in the background, more realities were ready to surface. Secrets Kody believed he'd covered could still surface, and the cracks in the empire could extend even wider. The Browns' tale was far from over. It was merely becoming darker. The aftershocks of the $8 million court ruling extended far beyond the four walls of that courtroom. Reporters, fans, and even far-flung relatives of the Browns buzzed with the shock that years of speculations had at last been verified. Within the family itself, though, the verdict touched off a firestorm of tension that had been smoldering for years. For Christine, Janelle, and Meri, the verdict was a validation, but it also reopened wounds of trust broken. For Cody and Robyn, it was the start of an unraveling they could no longer stem. The public image they had struggled to uphold for more than a decade had shattered with a single ruling and left nothing but raw, unvarnished reality on display for the world to see. The records uncovered in the trial were astounding in their detail. Bank statements detailed hundreds of thousands of dollars of transfers, usually channeled through shell companies nobody in the broader family even knew existed. Some of the payments resulted in high-end purchases, cars, jewelry, and vacations, that Cody and Robyn made while the other wives were informed there was no money to finance simple household maintenance. Christine remembered one particular incident in her testimony, an occasion when her daughter was in need of school supplies, but had to be told by Kody that they couldn't afford it. Christine later observed photos of Cody and Robyn on a weekend vacation, splurging. In court, her voice shook but held strong as she testified. "That was when I realized the family wasn't the family I thought it was. It was Kody's family with Robyn, and the rest of us were just along for the ride." Janelle's testimony was just as compelling. She presented receipts and records detailing how much she personally invested in the Coyote Pass property, money she thought was going into a future home for her children and herself. But in actuality, much of it got diverted into Kody's secret ventures. Her cool, measured demeanor in court was a stark contrast to Kody's spluttering defensiveness. When questioned why she had left such huge amounts of money in Kody's care, she replied quietly, "Because for years he assured us that this was a family, and I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Now I realize it was never about family. It was about control." Meri's participation, though less monetary, weighed heavily in terms of emotions. She disclosed that despite decades of disconnection, she continued to add earnings from her bed and breakfast to what she understood to be the communal fund. Kody had led her to believe that what she was giving was for the overall good of the family, but the books told a different story. Her money, too, had been channeled into Cody and Robyn's personal accounts. When the attorney questioned her about why she kept giving even though she felt excluded, Meri hesitated for a long time before answering, "Because I still hoped. I thought maybe if I was loyal, things would change. But instead, my loyalty was used against me." The reactions in the courtroom were telling. With every wife's account, Kody became more enraged, interrupting the testimony and shaking his head in comical dismay as if attempting to force-wish the testimony into oblivion. Robyn, on the other hand, sobbed through it all, at times grasping Kody's arm, at times blowing her nose with tissues. But the judge wasn't swayed by their performances. The evidence was too compelling, the patterns too evident. Cody and Robyn hadn't only mishandled funds. They had systematically diverted money for themselves while projecting an image of struggle and solidarity. The repercussions spilled over to fans shortly after. Social media exploded with hashtags condemning Cody and Robyn, labeling them as frauds and manipulators. Footage of the courtroom testimony went viral, each piece of footage depicting a man who built his empire on deception. Some of the fans sympathized with the kids stuck in the middle of the turmoil, while others called for TLC to cancel the show outright. It became a cultural phenomenon, not merely a family affair. The Browns, once the pioneers who braved the dangers of plural marriage, were now symbols of lies, greed, and betrayal. Behind the scenes, insiders close to production reported that TLC executives were convening emergency sessions. The question was straightforward. Could the show survive this much public outcry? Advertisers were nervous, sponsors were pulling out, and the once iconic brand that made the Browns famous was now poisonous. According to one insider, Cody had privately pitched a spin-off idea where he and Robyn would rebuild their lives, but executives weren't interested. The audience has chosen sides, the insider said. And they're not siding with Cody. Christine, Janelle, and Meri, on the other hand, were being courted by media outlets and publishers. Their story, long overshadowed by Cody's narrative, had become the centerpiece of the unfolding drama. Talk shows were clamoring for interviews, book offers were on the table, and producers were discreetly investigating a series based on the three women's path beyond Cody. Something that had been a cause of suffering was now a vehicle of empowerment. As Christine explained to a reporter outside the courthouse, "We lost years, but maybe we can turn that loss into something meaningful." But for all the victory the decision appeared to portend, unease still lurked beneath the surface. The $8 million order was huge, but it did not take away from the harm. Christine remained marked by years of invisibility. Janelle remained pained by the fact that her fiscal responsibility had been taken advantage of. Meri remained saddled with misplaced loyalty. And beyond them, their children, who had been raised to believe in the ideal of a united family, now had to come to terms with the fact that much of what they were taught was a fabrication. Some children remained firmly with their mothers, vowing never to forgive Cody. Others, caught between loyalty and betrayal, issued no public statements at all. The family was splintered in ways that no court order could repair. For Robyn and Cody, the post-ruling days were dark. Paparazzi photographed them exiting the courthouse, their faces clenched with shame. Robyn was seen toting boxes of papers, while Cody stormed at the cameras, berating them about betrayal and prejudice. Behind closed doors, according to sources, Cody was fixated on discovering how to appeal, believing the system against him was rigged. He railed about Christine and Janelle conspiring against him, portraying himself as the victim of a smear. But people near to the case said an appeal would be pointless. The evidence was tight, the verdict clear. Cody's empire had fallen under the burden of his own dishonesty. The verdict also created practical problems. The Browns' holdings were now on the block, with court-appointed officials set to sell property to satisfy the $8 million judgment. That included chunks of Coyote Pass, that which had been the emblem of Cody's dream for so many years. Watching that land possibly sold off to settle debts was a hard pill for him to swallow. For Christine and Janelle, it was ironic justice. The land that had previously been held out before them as a possibility of unity would now be taken away as evidence of Cody's treachery. As one of them said off-camera, according to reports, he thought Coyote Pass would make him a king. Now it's proof he was never honest. Even as the legal case played itself out, rumors of darker secrets began to surface. Investigators suggested there could be more accounts, those unknown even to the court's first glance. Business partners who previously worked for Cody started coming forward, reporting dirty deals and unpaid loans. The more one dug, it looked like the $8 million verdict was merely the tip of the iceberg. For the fans and ex-wives alike, there was one question that danced above all others. If Cody and Robyn were already keeping this much under wraps, what else were they keeping secrets about? In the weeks after the $8 million court ruling, the Browns were hit with a whirlwind unlike anything they had experienced before. The cameras were no longer present to draw a meticulously crafted portrait. Instead, reporters, money experts, and even old acquaintances emerged with fresh information. Every new disclosure seemed to draw a bleaker portrait of Cody and Robyn's transactions. What had been just murmurs of suspicion on the internet forums was now splattered across headlines. The patriarch of sister wives, the man who professes to make sacrifices for his family, was being revealed as a man who had used deception and exploitation to build his business. For Cody, the aftermath was hell of his own making. His carefully constructed public image was coming apart at the seams before his eyes. He could no longer count on the slick account that had been given by TLC for more than a decade. Raw fact and hard evidence were taking over the dialogue instead. The accounts uncovered by the court were not mere financial errors. They were deliberate acts of diverting funds and maintaining his own comfort at the expense of his wife's financial jeopardy. Cody's ego, ever at the forefront of his actions, now became the very sword that slayed him. Robyn's position was no less vulnerable, only differently so. While Cody battled the charges with angry denials, Robyn found herself in the crossfire of pity and suspicion. Some fans believed she had been used by Cody, while others insisted she was his equal accomplice in the conspiracy. The court file sure didn't do her any favors. The receipts and emails bound her directly to luxury spending, from designer furniture to expensive jewelry, all paid for from money stolen from family accounts. One damning entry revealed that while Christine was tightening her belt and fretting about how she would put food on the table for her kids, Robyn had approved thousands of dollars in personal expenses. To many, Robyn was no longer Cody's preferred wife. She was his accomplice. Christine, on the other hand, found a new image in the public spotlight. Having separated from Cody sooner than the others, she was the woman who not only survived, but prospered after the split. Interviews highlighted her independence now, her power to rebuild life beyond Cody's shadow. She talked openly about her decades of suffering and betrayal, but also illuminated the strength it had taken to leave. To fans, Christine was a heroine, a woman who had retrieved her own power and identity against all odds. Her online following went through the roof, and publishers scrambled for her book. It wasn't so much that Christine had abandoned Cody, it was that she had rewritten her story from victim to victor. Janelle, too, responded with less fanfare but no less force. Always practical-minded, she zeroed in on the bottom-line implications of the verdict. With funds being sold off, she would now be able to recover some of the capital she had put into Coyote Pass and other investments. Her calm, steady answers in interviews differed from Cody's tirades, and she earned an aura of credibility that was admired by fans. She acknowledged her devastation at discovering just how long she had been misled, but she also professed relief that the truth had finally been revealed. Her words resonated deeply. It hurts to know that trust was broken, but it's better than living in a lie. Janelle's steady approach helped her children navigate the storm as well, offering them a sense of stability amidst the chaos. Meri's reaction, though, captured the most attention. Long seen as the most isolated of the wives, her decision to stand with Christine and Janelle in court was a turning point. Fans who had sympathized with her in the past now clapped for her for entering the light of truth. She confessed openly that for many years she had dismissed her intuition, holding on to the hope that one day Cody would realize her worth. But the trial and its disclosures compelled her to face the painful truth, that her allegiance was misplaced. In her own words, "I wasted years waiting for someone who was never really there. But I don't regret standing here now because the truth matters." Her words resonated with viewers who themselves experienced the hurt of investing in a relationship that gave nothing in return. Auction houses started making arrangements to sell assets attributed to Cody and Robyn. Their Flagstaff mansion, which was at one time touted as the epitome of their lifestyle, was up for sale. Cars and properties were being listed. Even emotional possessions, long entrenched in their image on television, were not being left out. The image of their belongings being taken away held significant symbolism. For countless fans, it was the final destruction of Cody's empire, confirmation that no amount of denial could delete the effects of his actions. For the children, the impacts were devastating. Some were vindicated in the revelation of the truth, at long last seeing their lies finally confirmed. Others reeled at the public spectacle. Their intimate suffering made national discourse. The older kids conveyed guarded relief, suggesting decades of anger now vindicated by the court. The younger ones, protected as much as was feasible, still sensed the tension. The intergenerational cost of Kody's decisions was apparent. His behavior had broken not just his marriage, but also the legacy he wished to leave. With the scandal raging on, rumors of additional investigations layered additional suspense. Some within the industry speculated that authorities were still monitoring accounts associated with Kody's name, accounts that could uncover even larger amounts of secret funds. Rumors swirled that criminal charges might be next, transforming a civil ruling into something much worse. The mere prospect of such a development kept the tale alive, attracting viewers and critics who had to know how far Kody's facade extended. Christine, Janelle, and Meri capitalized on this momentum to cement their independence. Each of them dove into opportunities that highlighted their strength and resiliency. Through business ventures, media appearances, or personal ventures, they showed that life outside Kody was not only conceivable but improved. They evolved from side characters in Kody's drama to protagonists in their own right. Their stories encouraged fans, making them role models for anyone who had been manipulated and desired freedom. And still, despite all that had already been revealed, the feeling remained that the tale wasn't complete. The $8 million court judgment seemed huge, but also like it was only the tip of the iceberg. Each disclosure left more questions. What other secrets lay hidden in Kody's financial history? How much further did Robyn's complicity extend? Were there accounts or transactions nobody had yet found? The unresolved questions hung over large, leaving everybody viewing with the apprehensive feeling that the most surprising surprises were yet to come. The last few weeks following the court's verdict were like the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Kody Brown, who had crafted himself as the patriarch of a vast family empire, was now no more than a man desperate to hold on to scraps of power. His indignant interviews, his blaming of Christine, Janelle, and Meri, and his insistence that the court had gotten him wrong only exacerbated the belief that he was careening out of control. The more he talked, the less credit he was given, and to many who were observing, it seemed as if Kody himself was deepening the hole still further with every sentence. Robyn, on the other hand, retreated into virtual silence. Once the most steadfast supporter of Kody, her silence was deafening. Wherever she ventured in public, her face was tight and tense, and the burden of the scandal appeared to be seared into every feature. Court papers still linked her to the secret transfers, and speculation about her involvement continued to build. Some of the fans thought that she would end up betraying Kody to save herself, but others said she would die with him no matter what the cost. Her crying no longer earned her sympathy. It only instilled suspicion on whether she knew something and when she knew it. Christine, Janelle, and Meri, however, had come out not just vindicated, but wiser than before. Christine leaned into her new independence, flourishing in her freedom and feted by fans as a symbol of strength. Janelle worked on rebuilding, channeling her efforts into financial recovery and helping her kids with her trademark pragmatism. Meri, the formerly written-off sidelined wife, now stood proud, her path from silence to solidarity inspiring those who had watched her struggle for so many years. All three of them stood for the victory of truth over falsehood, a team that had never allowed Kody's machinations to define them. The auction of holdings continued to attract coverage. Coyote Pass, the longtime emblem of Kody's ambitions, was being confirmed for sale, its lots to be parceled out to strangers. The Flagstaff mansion went on sale, its erstwhile halls of glory now sullied by the burden of scandal. Even private possessions, furniture, cars, and jewelry, were valued and stickered for sale. To outsiders, these auctions weren't merely business deals. They were metaphorical teardowns of Kody's empire, concrete evidence that his grip at last had been taken away. Each thing sold was as if yet another shingle of his fantasy was torn off. But just as many believed the tale had peaked, there began to circulate whispers. Legal sources suggested the $8 million verdict may only be the beginning. Rumors were being circulated that detectives continued to sort through books and records, trying to find discrepancies that hadn't been accounted for. There was speculation about other LLCs in Kody's name, businesses not yet revealed in court. Some alleged there were secret accounts overseas, clandestine deals, and joint ventures that went far beyond what anyone had considered. Whispers increased, increasing the likelihood that the court order had merely touched the surface. Gossip online went wild. Fans picked apart all the rumors, speculating whether Kody had further funds stashed in hidden vaults or accounts under other names. Experts questioned whether Robyn played the role of more than a concerned wife, speculating that she could have been involved in hiding the funds. Theories ranged from links with external business associates, land trades, and agreements that would unmask a far-reaching conspiracy greater than that already revealed. If only a portion of it was real, the repercussions would dwarf the $8 million verdict to an insignificant level. The pressure was building for Kody. Sources near him asserted that he was growing more and more erratic, fixated on the belief that a member of his inner circle was passing on information to authorities. His paranoia created tension even with Robyn, with sources detailing heated exchanges and accusations within the confines of his home. The man who had placed himself firmly as the tough patriarch was now breaking down under suspicion and fear. And the more unstable he got, the more it looked as if cracks in his defenses were about to yield to even more disclosures. The wives, however, appeared prepared for whatever lay ahead. Christine talked in interviews about closure, but also suggested there was still more that the public didn't know. Janelle's remarks carried equal import, insisting that the money scandal was merely a piece of the bigger puzzle of manipulation and control. Even Meri, who tended to be brief with her remarks, joked that the truth was still coming out. Their calm assurance indicated that the saga of Cody and Robyn's deception was far from over, that there was more to come. And that put fans in suspense, curious about what the next installment would bring. Would investigators find secret millions in offshore accounts? Would Robyn open her mouth and turn against Kody to save herself? Would more lawsuits be forthcoming, or even criminal charges? Each question hung suspended in the air, unsaid but impossible to avoid. The $8 million verdict had been historic, but the feeling among those who had watched was that the most stunning disclosures were yet to come out of the woodwork. Because in the Browns' world, secrets always managed to come out. And if the gossip were true, the next installment would reveal a scandal so sweeping, so profound, that the $8 million order would be remembered as not the end of Kody's demise, but rather the beginning.